So continuing our tour around the jQuery UI, so far we've set up a div with some text in it and we've made it draggable by applying the draggable function to it. And now we can drag it wherever we like. So what if we wanted to customize the way in which this was draggable, for example? We might want to only be able to drag it up and down, not left and right. Let's see if there's a way to do that. So here's the draggable page on jQueryUI.com. If we have a look down at the examples on the right, we've got constrain movement. And this first example only allows you to be dragged up and down, and this one only left and right. So quick challenge, can you see the code? Work out how to apply that in our case to make our text only draggable vertically. Go for it. Okay, did you do it? Let's have a look. View source. There we go. So your eye should shift past all of this really, because we're not that interested in the styles. What we really want is this here. So it looks like if we add an option of axis and set it equal to Y, that will only allow it to be scrolled in the Y axis, i.e. the vertical axis. So let's have a look at that. So now we can drag only up and down. And of course, if I wanted to change that to horizontal, then that would apply as well. So I'm going to leave that there so you can see it in action. Let's have a little look at some of the other draggable options. So this one can be dragged about, but only within a certain area. And that one can only be dragged about within its small box as well. So can you figure out how to do that in our case? Did you manage it? Once again, it looks like it's quite straightforward. We can just set the containment parameter to a particular ID, or indeed just the parent, which looks like the simplest option for us. So let's check that out. See if we can make that happen. So we'll need a div which will be our box. So I'm going to be naughty and put some inline styles in there. So we'll just have width 400 pixels, height 300 pixels, and background color yellow. So have a little look. There we go. Great. And then inside that div, we'll have a little paragraph that says, I'm stuck in the box. And then, because that's our only paragraph, we can select it using a P. And then we want to apply draggable to it. And we want to set the containment parameter to parent. All right, let's give it a go. And indeed, we can only drag it in the box, which is great. Interestingly, we can only drag it up and down as well. Can you think about why that might be the case? I hope you figured that out. It's because we used a paragraph tag here, and a paragraph tag by default stretches across the whole width of its container. So I can't drag the paragraph left and right because it is already at the whole width of the box. So if I change the paragraph to a span, which doesn't span the whole width, then that should fix the issue, and now I can drag it up and down and also left and right. But I'm still stuck in the box. Alright, so there's obviously a lot more options we can do, but the last thing I want to show you about Draggables is the API documentation. So we've been working from examples here, which is all well and good, but sometimes you need a bit more than examples to work out exactly what's going on. And that's what the API documentation is for. And here you can see all the details of all the different things that we can do. So I'm not going to go into this in great detail, but for example, one of the options we can apply is to choose whether or not a certain class is applied, whether or not the draggable helper is added, etc., etc. And we've already seen the axis option. So that's where you get a lot more detail and usually some nice examples as well that you can see exactly how it works. All right, so let's jump back over and look at another jQuery interaction, resizable. So this one looks pretty straightforward. We can just resize an object using a little handle in the corner there. So can you create a resizable div in our code? Go for it. All right, hope you managed it. It's pretty straightforward. Again, we just apply the resizable function to our div. So let's create a div. Just as they've done, we'll give it an ID of resizable, and then we'll select it with JavaScript. Or in fact, we can just paste that straight in. So we're selecting the resizable div by its ID, and we're applying the resizable function to it. I'm just going to have a quick bit of style there for my resizable div, and we'll have width 100 pixels, height 100 pixels, and background color blue. Okay, there you go. So you can see we've got the handle right there for us, and we can of course drag this about. Great. Let's have a quick look at a couple of the options here. I think snap to grid could be very useful in some situations. So obviously there you're restraining the possible set of sizes. And then we can do that just by setting the grid property to 50. So let's do that here. Grid is 50. So that's 50 pixels for the grid width. There we go. We could also resize another element at the same time. There we go, just like that. Let's see how we do that. So we just add an option of also resize along with the selector for the element that we want to also resize, and we set the other element to be resizable as well. So let's try that. So we'll have div with an ID of also, just as they've done, and that's going to be quite similar in style to my initial one, but we'll make it red. And then we just need to add the property here. I'm going to put them on separate lines as we've seen before, with commas separating them. And then we want also resize, and we want to also resize the also div, the one with the also ID. And then remember, we just need to apply the resizable command to also as well. All right, let's have a look. Fantastic. So notice that grid only actually applies to the first one, but the second one does resize smoothly. Okay, so one final thing, what if you wanted something to happen when the width hit a certain size. You might be resizing this rectangle, and when the user goes above a certain width, you might want to change the page layout in some way. Well, a word should be coming into your mind when you're thinking of doing things like that, and that is a callback function, as we've seen before. So we're going to need to see how to find a callback function on our resize. Let's have a look again at the API documentation. And you can see we've got a bunch of options, which is what we've looked at so far. We've got methods, which are like functions that we can apply to our resizable. So we can destroy it, we can disable it, enable it, etc. And we've got events, and these are things that happen usually during the resize. So this is when it's created, this is when it's been resized, and when the resizing is started or stopped. So what we're interested in is doing something when it hits a certain size. So that's going to happen when it's been resized. So this is a JavaScript or jQuery event. We want to do something when that event happens. So you can see we've got various options again. I'm going to look for a code example. And this is then the crucial bit that we need here. So we've seen this before when we've done callback functions. This looks for a resize event, and when a resize event happens, we run a certain function. So that's what we're interested in here. So let's jump back over and see if we can apply that to our original resizer or resizable. So for now, let's just alert hello when the element has been resized. Let's see what that does. Oh, have to get the right one. There we go. So it's alerted hello when we've completed a resize. We said that we wanted to do something if it reaches a certain width. So we'd have to get the width of our resizable. We know how to do that. We just select it in the usual way, resizable, and we get the width. This is particularly useful for us because it returns a number rather than if we use CSS width, then that will return the number plus px, which we're not particularly interested in here. We'd have to remove the px. So this is just a number, so we can then check to see if the width is greater than, for example, 300. And for now, what we'll do is just alert big enough. Something like that. So let's have a look. Once we get to bigger than 300, we get to big enough. And notice I didn't stop the resizing. I'm still resizing, and we still get this pop up here. So this is how we add a callback function to our resizable to do something when it's been resized. All right, now we're going to move on and look at an element that was designed with a callback function in mind, and that is the droppable interaction.